Hi all, I'm Vijay Jithani. So today's session 2 on AZ104, which is implement and manage storage. Okay. So from exam perspective, the weightage is 15 to 20%. Okay. And this also form the base of our Azure implementations, right? So as we have covered some basics of how the subscriptions and all those in the previous session. Now in this session, we are going to start with the storage. And in future sessions, that is 3 and then going forward, we will have the networking as well as implementing the infrastructure. So this form the base of those infrastructure as well. Okay. So as you clearly see these topics, configure access to storage. You see more of how you configure networking, how you provide the access, that is shared access signature. So we will cover topic by topic so that you need not worry about anything while we implement each of them. I think this will be covered, but we will start from configuring the storage account, and then we also see how you have the Azure files and Azure Blob storage created, and then obviously we'll come to how you manage the access to that. So I think without wasting much of time on the agenda, let's get started. Okay. So here I've already have that agenda for us. So first thing what we have to understand is from the storage perspective, how the data structure look like. Okay, then we will go into configuring the storage account and blob storage, covering the security, Azure files, and finally we have the hands-on lab, which will give you a very much detailed on how you implement those. But from exam perspective, make sure every topic you go through, you are doing the hands-on lab simultaneously, because there are a lot of steps which you here and then you have to implement. Okay, that means what I'm trying to say here is in you cover the theoretical part of it and you cover the practical part of it simultaneously, so that you remember what access policies are there, how you create them, what are the different ways to create them, because exam will test all those things in terms of scenarios. Also, you know that you have case studies, also you have multiple choice questions. Some or other way in exams you are going to get these topics where you will be question on those specific subjects. Okay, so now let's start with the storage data structure. Now this, even being very basic, I think we should understand how basically the storage is created or how basically our files are organized. Now when I talk about page blob, this is one kind of a structure where your physical hard drive is divided into sectors. Okay, tracks and sectors. So basically any you know mechanical hard drive, you have tracks and sectors, but from the page perspective, 512 bytes is what the fixed size of each sector is. That means you cannot go below this. And who uses this? Basically your virtual disk or anything you are using for virtual machine hard drive or any of the virtual hard drive. Basically the page blob is you are using. Okay. Now similarly, the file can also be on blob. Now which of these file can be on blob? The file which actually varies from 1 byte to 4000 megabytes. Now, as this is sequential stream, this does not have a structure like your page, and the purpose is also different for block blob, or I would say a blob, in this case blob. So they are mainly for your binary files, mainly for something which is a sequential stream which you want to store. You don't have a uh, like you don't know the length of that particular, it can go from 0 to, but it will be stored in form of a 4000 MB, and then again it repeats for that particular length. So point to make out here is based on whether you are going for 512 bytes versus 4000 MB, you have to make sure you understand the structure. That means what I'm trying to say, logically when you are creating files, they are going to sit on any of these two. That means either they can be page or they can be blob or blob in short. Okay. So remember, this is the structure of your storage. And similarly, if you talk about your file share is more of a logical structure. It is tied to your operating system. whether you are using SMB, NFS or whatever protocol, they are tied to your operating system. That means at the end of the day, if the file is of binary, it will sit on blob. If file is virtual hard disk, it will sit on page blob. So this file share is more of a logical structure than the physical partitioning or physical. Below this, it is going to use any of them. So I will just pause here for a while so that you go through. Also increase the size so that you are able to see these words. Okay. So remember, the files can be either in form of page or block. In block, you also have append blob, but anyway, they are still the blob. The parameters remains the same, and the files, that is any of the file shares or files, sit on any of these tools. So this is the basics. So just go through this before we move on the further topic. Okay, so now I have also created a comparison chart for this data structure. So I want you to go out for this. If you see whatever we have talked about page blob, this is 512 fixed page. That means hard disk, any of the data is written, it will be multiple of 512 is what we are saying here. Similarly, a blob will go from 1 byte to 4000, and these are mainly uh, either the sequential files, your binary files, and those kind of. And Azure files more of a traditional. So ideally, remember, files are nothing but they are logical uh, uh, creation of a data structure which is managed by your operating system. SMB, NFS are the way to access those files. At end of the day, they are going to sit on a hard disk which will have some kind of either the structure which is page or block. Okay, so now from an example perspective, I've also given you that VSD, MP4 and a corporate team share. So remember, these are what you remember from your exam perspective, also the difference between them, and also note down the maximum file size. For page, it is 8 terabyte. For blob, it is 190.191, you can say, and the Azure files for 4 terabyte per single file. So it can expand to a very large amount of data. Okay. Remember the purpose. Okay. They are used for different purpose. Hard disk versus binary or stream files or sequential files versus the logical structure of Azure files, which can be used for as any of the shared drive or any of your team drives. So again, I will pause here for a while. You go through this comparison and then we will continue further. Okay, so let's move further. Now, this slide is the base for what are we going to do in this particular session as well. So if you see the account types, there are basically two types of accounts, standard versus premium. Okay, so standard versus premium. Standard, as the name suggests, it will sit on your basic hard drives, and the premium is nothing but you which has a higher IOPS, higher capacity in the speed, you can say, in terms of access. Okay, now if you see general purpose, everything from what you are going to implement, they are going to sit on your hard disk. And premium, you see the block blobs, the file shares, the page blobs, all three are covered here as well. Similarly as well, so the structure remains the same, your data structure remains the same what you have covered above. Next thing comes to is how are you going to have a redundancy. So from a redundancy perspective, I'm going to cover in next slide what these means. Okay, so bear with me for a while for this. Now, as we are storing this data, we need some kind of the data protection. So here is if someone deletes that, how soon I can recover that, or what are the constraints I have before I can recover that. So that will be there. Blob versioning is more of I want to retain if something gets overwritten, I want to restore it back. So that is the blob version. Also, if from backup, if I am restoring something, point in time restore is also available. Okay. Now these all topics will get clear once you actually do the hands-on labs. Okay. But for setting up the context, this is what you have to cover for exam as well. These are the topics you have to cover for exam as well. Now, storage endpoints are nothing but I want to expose an endpoint which is accessible from a specific network drive or internal to Azure, then giving access to everyone. So that is what the storage endpoints mean. Okay, that means I want to make this available from this particular endpoint and accessible by a specific network, then giving access to everyone. So from that point, it also brings us private versus anonymous. That means if I give with the help of the private as well, and I create a storage point, I can give an access. But if I don't want to make if it is just a website or if it's a public access or something drive which is shared across everyone or every department, I can also give the anonymous access. Now, storage account keys, these are the primary and secondary keys. They are for you to manage and access, or I would say programmatically access is the storage account. So one storage account key are at the root level. There are also ways to give access to the respective blobs, respective files, so that you will see once you implement this storage account. Okay, shared access signature is also I will come to once we cover that topic. At this point of time, understand what you have to cover as a part of exam so that you remember them and accordingly we move further. Now, other thing is the storage cost. So obviously the premium will be costly, and the basic ones, which is a standard, they will be dealing with hot, cool, and archive. But if you see for premium, you don't have all those these options because everything is hot here. So there is no such option of hot, cool, and archive. Okay, for premium. Okay, and administration perspective, there may be the cases where you want to replicate your objects. That means the blobs from one particular storage account to another. This is for what for that they have given the object replication. We will see this as well. Life cycle is say suppose after 20 days to 30 days, or I would say after 1 month or so, I want to move them from hot to cool. And then if they are not used for more 6 months, I want to again move them to archive. So that is the life cycle blob manager. And you will see while you go to have this administration part. Azure tools is Azure Storage Explorer and other tools which you can use to access the storage account. Okay. So again, I will pause here for a while, go through this particular slide in a minute, and then we move further. Okay, so now next topic, let us jump directly to create a storage account and then we will see each one of them before we move further. So that, as I said, go parallelly one by one so that you are aware of what are we going to try from our now at this point of time, first most important thing I think which last time uh, I have told you was for Azure policy. So now this is a time to create those Azure policy before we jump into creating any of the storage accounts, because for this what we want to have is make sure that we provide some kind of tag for resource group. If you don't have tag, then you cannot create that resource group. So let me create this policy, and these are some basics which you have to remember. Okay, so So what is the policy definition? Inherit a tag from resource group. Okay. So you can actually have this version 1, version 2 uh, selected from. Okay. So this is what you can do. And also here, this policy definition, you can accordingly select from the available definitions. Okay. So there are a number of definitions, but at this point of time, we will stick to resource group. Okay. I will also show you inert attack from resource group. Okay, so this is the policy informed by default. Okay, so here important thing to note down is one is inert attack from resource group. This will work if I want to have a uh, tag on the resource. Okay, so important parameter before we go to remediation is you want to have some tag name. Okay, so in this case let me have the department. I want to make sure it should have the department as a tag name. Okay. Similarly, uh, remediation, manage identity. This is something which how you have to have the once you are going to actually go into the implementation part of other resources, this will be useful for providing the permissions. That means if this does not exist, this will have ability to deploy on existing resource. Okay, that means what I'm trying to say here is if say suppose any resource group, um, if any of your implementations does not have the tag, it will inherit from resource group. Okay, so non-compliance message you want to give that why you are applying this, because you don't have tag applied for department required for billing. Okay, so this is the message you can pass, and finally you will review and create the policy. Okay, so this is the policy to actually inherit the tag from resource group. But this will work for us. Okay, this will work for us from the point of rule assignment creation is process, and then we'll move ahead and create the policy for us. Now another thing which I want is require a tag. One was inherit tag, which I have already have the tag. Another policy which I want is have the this also I have to select the version. By default you don't have any options here, but if there are any, you can actually create your own policy or custom policy to work on that. Okay, so what I want here is I want a respective tag. Now here also policy enforcement, let's keep the default, and parameters I want to make sure is again the department which I want to have on resource group. Okay, so here let me review this and create this point. Okay, so at this point of time what I have is I have two policies. Okay, which are basically applied on the resources and resource group. So first thing, let us see if let me first try to create a storage account without, or first resource group I would say. So let me create the resource group. Okay, so let me create a resource group, say name is at 104 labs. Okay, so I'm just creating review and create. See, validation failed. So we need a tag. And remember what we have given is department. So at this point of time, I can say engineering, or any you can put development test as well. I have just pick one of them. Okay. So now let us try to create a resource group, and validation succeeded. Let me try to create that. Okay. So resource group is created for us. Okay, Az104. Now let us create a storage account within that. Okay. Now in storage account, make sure you remember and everything, whatever you have learned or we have gone through the slides. Okay. So what I'm trying to give is that let me give a specific name so that this should not clash with anyone else. So is it storage account? Okay, I'm just initialize with my name so that I think I have already created this. So let me give the account 3. Okay. The field only can contain letters and name must be between. Okay, I think it is going beyond the 24 characters. So let me cut short something here. Okay. So here basically you are given options. First of all, I am into the AZ104. That means I need not worry about tags on the resource group. I have two policies. One is the which I have for creating resource group. Another one is inheriting a tag from resource group. So whatever the components or whatever the accounts will be created, they will be inheriting tag directly from resource group. So that is what the Azure policy you are going to apply on your. And from the scoping perspective, you can have the scoping at the management group level, or you can have scoping at subscription level as well. Okay. So remember that. So we are going with the standard only, and this also let me go with the LRS. I will explain you these all things in detail, but I think at this point of time, just understand that we are just going with the basics of how you create the storage account. We'll come back to this because while I move further, I think this will make sense for you to actually correlate to this. Okay. So at this point of time, I am not coming to these any of these options, and because after I create this, I will come back, and because we have slide to cover which will cover all of these LRS and these things, and we come back again. So let me go back and actually show you the the other part of it. Okay. So the lab which I've just shown you, it was just to show you how the storage account look like. We are about to create it, but before we create it, we want to see what we will have within that. Okay. So you will have a container and the blobs, you will have table and entities, queue and message, files and directories. So these are the different types of, I would say, different types of the flavors you can have, or I would say data structure. But remember, at the back end, they will be ID the way we have covered, they will be either page or blob. Okay, these are the logical structures sitting on top of your storage account. Remember that. And what kind of the blobs you can have for, you can see these all files. Okay. So similarly, the directories, what you have is you will have this kind of, and they will finally sit in either page or blob. Okay. Tables are nothing but your key kind of key value pairs. Similarly, the queue, it will be giving some kind of instructions or messages to. So remember the different purposes of these particular logical structure which you're going to create on storage account. Now, this is what I was trying to tell you. So if you see from the storage account perspective, I can't have the data which is sitting there, and if in case of any catastrophic event or data center failure or even the rack failure, I should not leave my I should not lose my data. Okay, so that is where these different type of redundancies are put in place, or I would say a replication across the data centers or within the data center. So LRS works for one particular region. It protects you against the disk and node and rack failures, and it write is acknowledged when all replicas are committed. That means it is a synchronous replication across. Okay. So remember, this is acknowledged when all replicas are committed. That means it will be within that particular region. Hence, everything has to be acknowledged before it can say that the write is being done for that particular data. Now, difference between this and ZR is this is for one particular rack or node failures, but ZRS, which is zone, is for even for the this plus the data center failures, I would say. Okay, remember this is ZRS is nothing but your rack failures and whatever you have seen in LRS plus the your data center failures. And again, there is a synchronous write. That means until everything is written, the writes will not be confirmed. Now, this was helpful till we have the one particular region and the different data center in that region. What if I have a business which is scattered across the different geographies? In that, I need something multi-region. So for this, I have ZRS, that is, I need to have a replication. But now I can't wait for the other reason to write and then come back to me saying that will take a lot of time. So for this, I have asynchronous replication. In asynchronous replication, first you have the synchronous model within this region, the way you have seen here. Then once it is written, I will do a copy of that to a secondary region. It can take any time because at this point of time, I am not using this as a secondary because this is just the backup for me. Okay, so it protects against the major regional disasters. So remember, this is the data center level. This is a zone related disaster we are managing here. Similarly, simultaneously, what we want we have seen is you also can have read access, okay, to your secondary data. Even though it will not be, you will not be writing anything or read write directly from that particular application, but you can read from that secondary if you cannot write. Okay, so that is what is RAGRS. So here is read access to secondary. Separate secondary point to distribute your load because in our daily life you have something like reporting or some kind of data you fetch. You just need a read access. You don't need to write anything. You are just creating reports out of it. So in these kind of scenarios, it is very helpful that load is divided between primary and secondary. Okay. So again, pause here for a while before you move further. Okay. So now storage account, and in this also we have seen that what we have standard and the premium. Okay. So this is what I'm showing you here. And how you create container and this blob, I think we are going to see just now. So now we can switch back to our practical. Okay, so this is what we filled. What we did, we just have the policy created on resource group so that it inherits the tag from the resource group. We have given the naming convention for that. So let's see what we have as a part of our. So this is something which I want to show you first as a basic. Now let's see what is the advance we have. Now at the blob level, what settings you can have is hierarchical namespace. This is more used for the data lake storage. Now, unless you are going for the data lake, don't click on any option. So by defaults, whatever is important will be already selected. You need not worry about selecting any others if you don't know those options. Okay, so at this point of time, leave it because this is for data lake generation to endpoint. We are not going to enable this at this point of time. Okay, similarly, we are not want to have any FTP software which can be used. So we are not enabling any this is nothing but secure FTP. Okay, so we don't are not enabling anything. So remember, we also are not enabling the tenant replication. That means I have as of now in tenant Vijay Jethani. So I don't want to enable it to across different tenants. So I am just keeping it local and the access which I am having is just hot. As I've told you, these are the options in that basic slide. Similarly, for the files, you can also have enable network file system, which is enable the hierarchical namespace must be enabled. So as I am not enabled in the hierarchical namespace, I am just retaining myself to the classic Azure files at this point of time. Also, as I have already told you that you whether you want to manage yourself as a classic level or you can have the manage identity which will be done at the Azure storage level. So if you are doing that, just make sure you click on this particular identity for SMB. Okay. Similarly, if you require an encryption for transit for NFS, just click this as a part of I will not be going with this directly. Okay. So remember, this will be also combination of storage account, performance, replication. At this point of time, my location does not support encryption for, hence it is not giving me option, but there are the locations which will provide you that options. Okay. At this point of time, I am just having the encryption in transit for SMB, which is the default protocol for our operating system at this point of time. Okay. I'm not also selecting the SMB. Now, again, going further, at this point of time on the networking, as I already told you, you can actually secure with the help of the endpoint. That means I can have a endpoint tied to a network and then only allow that network to be accessed from the respective application. That is how I can make it private as well as accessible only from the. So at this point of time, I will leave it the default, which is public network access. But if I want to make sure secure the perimetry, I can do that. Similarly, if I don't want anything, any outbound access, I will say disable for this public network access. Okay, so make sure based on the your requirement, you are selecting these options. At this point of time, this is enabled for all network, but if I want, I can really select that virtual network from the which I can enable for this. Okay, so make sure these options which I'm talking about, you do hands-on thoroughly so that in exam you are very well aware of what you have. Similarly, is for creating a private endpoint. For this, you will require a networking. So at this point of time, we will not do this, but I think you can actually go and create the virtual networking or and have pull this private from the that subnet where you have created the endpoint. Okay, but just to show you, this is how it will look like. It is not that difficult job. Only thing is which specific resource you want to have the secure with that endpoint. What is the name of the endpoint you will create? Make sure you have the virtual network created, and it will by default it will have the default subnet for that. But if you want to have the separate subnet also, you can just create and pull that subnet in. Okay, make sure the private endpoint is accordingly selected. But from exam perspective, you will be tested as we don't have labs, you will not be tested on creating these private endpoints and anything. But from the knowledge perspective, you should be aware of these things. They happen. At this point of time, I want to make sure the Microsoft network routing, that means it is taken care by Azure. But if you are in production environment have created any your user defined routes, so you can have your internet routing accordingly and select your appliance for routing preference. Okay. Remember these all settings, even for soft delete, you can have and create for, say, suppose I want to keep it for 30 days. It's purely in our hands. Similarly, is for this containers, I can make sure that this is retained for even 30 days. I want to enable the versioning for blobs so that I can be able to go to the previous version if required. Okay. And enable blob change field. Keep track of modification and deleting. This is an important option in case of productions, but I think make sure you rotate it because these are going to grow very big unless and until you are actually tracking someone. This should be disabled. Okay. And but similarly, all apart from this also you can have, okay, what you do is enable this, but just keep it for 7 days so that it keeps on rotating. That means at any point of time I'm just monitoring the for 7 days this particular so that the logs does not grow that big. Okay. Azure files also, I want to days to retain the deleted file shares, I want to make sure it has 30 days. Okay. So we started with the basics. We have seen the advanced at this point of time. Whether you want to enable the hierarchical namespace, similarly for Azure files, you have only two things, blob and file. From, if you remember the data structure part, so this is what the basics are. And from networking, you just come to whether you want to give access to everyone or public, have your selections, data protection, if anything gets deleted, or also I want to enable point in time restore for my containers. Now this is something to restore from an earlier state. If the point in time is enabled, then the versioning change feed and the blobs of relief also needs to be enabled. This is simple to give you that I want to make sure that so and so I want to restore it for a specific version. So that is what the point in time restore. So this also I want to make sure I have this I think this is the value must be at least 1 or less than the okay make that's correct. So this is what, because I cannot go exactly to that level, so I have to keep it between say okay, this is the 1 and 6. I think I forgot this. Yeah, so this is because we are doing the point in time restore, so it's not about the 30 days, it's more of a uh, what maximum restore points I can have. Okay, 1 and 6. So I cannot have unlimited, right? A maximum restore points I can have. So if it is 7 days, so I can have because the change feed and everything is retained for that particular time. So better say give it near to 6. Okay. So remember, these are something which you have to make sure, and also from information, I think it will give you an example. Set the oldest possible restore point. For example, if we choose 30 days ago, then the earliest date for restore on May 31 is May 1. Okay, so make sure you understand these. So if I go 30 days, then obviously I should have retention more than that, right? So if I keep it 60, so that is what here it is, give me give me the option, right? So this is what you have to remember. At this point of time, let's focus on what we are doing before. Okay. So this is more on a data production. Then coming to security, at this point of time, as I said, I don't want to have a secure FTP and all those things. So this is what will be more on anonymous access. I don't want to give enable storage account by access. Yes, at this point of time, the storage keys will be an permitted scope for copy operation. I can do a copy as of now. Yes, you can do, but I think in future you can restrict yourself to any same tenant or I from the private endpoint as well. Okay. Microsoft Defender is a native for security intelligence, but if you want to really have some data intelligence, then only you enable that, because this is not free. This is going for a charge. Okay. Now, encryption type. By default, Microsoft does this encryption of your data. One at the storage level, and another is at the infrastructure level. You want to have the separate customer managed keys for that. But if you want to have the double encryption, then only do that, which is, I think, required for the production. But in short, what we want to say is there is some kind of encryption key which is actually encrypting your data. Okay, and whether I should follow for all or I should just follow for blobs and file is what you want to. As I said, in infrastructure, this is purely in our hand. By default, Azure encrypts storage account at rest. Infrastructure encryption at a second layer. This is the second thing. That means there will be two different keys. And remember, this cannot be changed after creation. That means if you have, because infrastructure level keys are created once you do this. That means there will be two types of encryption. One is encryption at the data level. That means one particular blob is encrypted and within what is the storage service encryption already provided by Microsoft. Okay. This, even if I don't give, I think it should inherit. That is what we meant, right? So at this point of time, I'm trying to leave this. Preferred storage type is required. What is that? Okay, here. So at this point of time, I'm just keeping it to Azure Blob storage or data lake storage. Okay. So that is what, let me try to have this created. Remember, I have not given tag here. Our policy should be actually applied to this particular, all the resources which are creating it part of this particular storage account. I have just given the tag to my resource group and everything should be taken care automatically by inheritance. That means while the remediation take place, the tags will be applied directly to all the resources created within that resource group. Okay, our deployment is complete. Let's go to this storage account. So now this is how the look and feel of your storage account will be. And the first thing is let's go through this blob services, file services, queue table. At this point of time, I have not enabled this security and networking. Okay. We have seen everything this while we were creating in the tabs of the storage account, right? Also, one is using the whatever options you can choose and enable and disable directly from here, or there is a way step by step. So suppose here is these blades. If you are going to see, let's start with the visualizer. Okay, so storage browser, which I am trying to say. So at this point of time, I am going to create one particular container here. Say this will be my resource container. Okay, and I want to keep private at this point of time. I don't want to give any access, but I think if you see, I can select if there are any other encryption scope. Okay, and I am not having at this point of time, so I'm leaving this specific and creating this container. So with this, I think you just created the container. Okay, so now again move back to our slides. Okay, so this we have seen. I have shown you how you create container. This is what you select. And part of creating this particular tier, I think you have selected hot by default. Okay, this life cycle management, let us come to this part. I'm just at this point of time, I want to want you to go through this particular how what is life cycle management is. This is moving to the cooler or archive deletes at particular point of time is what the life cycle is. So we are going to see this. Okay. Now, from security perspective, again, I'm going to show you where the storage account keys are, how you are going to have the access created. Okay. This is the shared access signature. Customer managed keys and Microsoft managed keys, which we just selected at this point of time. You're going for customer managed key, then you have to have a key created and it's stored in from the key vault. This is what you will look into. And finally, we will go through this particular Azure files. Okay. And then we will look into the lab. So at this point of time, let's go back to our storage account. So at this point of time, first of all, let me show the from a security access keys. So this is my storage account keys. Okay. So you can rotate them. Okay. If you think that and connection strings are where you programmatically connect to that the storage account by complete URL because everything is HTTPS based or I would say URL based. So you give them an access and then keys so that they can access this programmatically. Okay. So this is an access key. Now, one thing to note down here is while you move to your, let me come back to the storage browser again. If you create anything at the root account level, that is being governed completely by the storage account keys. But if you want to provide any restricted access, okay, so you can come here and change access level. At this point of time, I want to make sure this is at least blobs are being provided an access level. Okay. So at this point of time, this is flowing from an account, so it is not giving me an access level container. Okay. So that is where I want to tell you that this particular access level needs to be changed from the root level to come back here. If I enable this anonymous access on a storage account, this is possible. So in short, what I'm trying to say here is whatever the restrictions you put on the storage account, you have to keep it less restrictive going to the most restrictive in terms of how you are going to manage your respective shares. Okay. Also, one more thing I want to show you here is change the or I would create a shared access. First of all, before I generate SAS, let me go for access policies. So this is again a security level. So I want to make sure that this is giving me read only, and the permissions I want to give is read and list. Okay. So these are the two permissions, and I want to make sure this stays for a specific time or stays unlimited. Just click on OK to that. So what in short I have done on this container is I have given an access policy so that this stays there for the read for this particular resource container. That means only I should be able to add, and the anyone accessing this container should have read only. They should not have any more access than me. Okay. On top of this, what I want to give you is this is the stored access policy, right? So what I did was I have just applied a stored access policy to this content. At this point of time, there's no content, but I think this is more than sufficient for you to. This is how the URL will look like. And at this point of time, I'm just going with the account encryption scope. Okay. I don't have anything. So other options you can see is uh, generate SAS. So access policy is something which stays there on account permanently. But if you generate the SAS, then I'm giving you for that particular time frame. Okay. So suppose at this point of time, if I want to lock both of, say, suppose I have given someone the modification permission, but due to security incident, I want to delete that. I cannot delete SAS unless and until it is access. It is actually governed by the policy. So that is where the stored access policy helps you here. If you don't give this, I think this will stay indefinitely, or if it, or I would say for the time base which you give here, start and expiry. That means there is no override unless and until something I do, or I remove that specific blobs or the account itself. So that SAS will remain, that is a shared access signature will remain till the time you have created this. There's no way to override this unless and until I give some policy to that. So the way you should use it, you have more restrictions in terms of selecting these or tying these shared access signature to these policies, so that in case something happens, I just delete this shared access policy. So this SAS is removed automatically, because if this is not there, this cannot take place. Okay, so remember these are the important things for the shared access signature to work. But if I don't select this, that means I keep it none, then this can remain indefinite. I don't have way to override this. So make sure you understand what the stored access policy is, and say, let me check one thing. Let me give the expiry date as the August, and I'm done. Generate the SAS and token for me. So this is a token kind of a password. This is a URL kind of a connection string. So you just give them these and they should be able to access your this particular container. Remember, now this is tied. So if you see, I can also show you directly if I delete the this particular access key which is at the store level, you can devalidate this. Okay. So we covered access keys, which is at the storage account level, stored access signature. Now this is, remember, the which I have shown you was at the container level. This is at the root level. Okay, so the security lies at the root level, then it flows directly based on what you have from the access, and then moves on directly to the. So at this point of time, we have given the Microsoft to manage the key. So that is what it is showing. Again, whatever the tabs you have seen while creation of account, everything will be shown here. So I want to show you the redundancy at this point of time. We just selected LRS, but you can select in future as well, or change in future as well if you want. Okay, but at this point of time, I will stick to the basics. Data protection. Again, remember this is what we were facing issue with in terms of. So again, this remains same. You can come to this data management blade and then have that this modification for each of them. Now this is what something which I have not shown you. At this point of time, I have other storage account, that is storage account and storage. So I can show you the replication rules. So suppose the destination, this is sources will be this. Okay, that means account 3. Destination, I want to go for my account. I want to have a, see, first of all, let us understand what this is. Action will apply prioritize replication to your policy. If the source and destination account of policy are located within the same continent, this will also apply at service level, ensuring that 99% operating replication to the destination are copied within 15 minutes. So this is what I want to make sure that they are done within the 15 minutes. If no, then obviously, as I said, it will be doing, it can, there can be lag based on it, the data or replication, it takes place automatically. It will not be prioritized. Similarly, enable replication monitoring is where I have reached. I can just enable both of them. Okay. Now, is there any way I can select? Yes, I can directly go to the resource container, and I can, irrespective of, this is source. That means I, in this account, I have the container name storage, but in my actual storage account, which is AZ400, I have the test as a container. Okay. The destination container cannot be the source container and another policy. Okay. So because I already have the policy created there, that is the reason it's not giving me. Otherwise, this could have. Okay. Because this container which I have selected is this a source for someone else. Okay. That is the reason it's not allowing. But let me change here. Let me change it to a storage account 2 and then come down and resource container here and test container there. Again, this might be, I think, so I have to be very careful while selecting this. Otherwise, this will not give us the option to because what is happening is in my storage, I will show you what I'm trying to make here. Let us leave the edits there itself. I have already created the object replication there. Storage account 2, I believe so. Let's see. This is the reason it was not giving. So if I say delete this, I think it should be fine. So let me. Okay. So let me go back to the my storage account, which is account number 3. And then come to the object replication, create replication rules. Select the storage account as a destination. The source container and test. See. Now I'm not getting in error because I cannot have something which is already in the destination and then I replicate again someone to that. So that will actually get override to, there are two different accounts trying to replicate to the same destination, which will override the destination. Because of that, I think you are not getting the, you are getting the error. So I think the object replication is this is what you have to manage. Again, now also we have seen the lifecycle management, right? So the another part which you have to see is the life cycle management. So life cycle management is okay. I want to say archive for all this, but what should I do? More than 180 days, delete the blob or move to the archive storage. Skip blobs that have been dehydrated after 7 days. Because what happens is many a times the blobs have been recreated or rehydrated in the terms of refreshed. So those will not be included in this from any restores in last 7 days. The other than that, I think because there will be something restore or some point in that will be happening. So make sure you understand these policies. Also, they are saying that if you have the workloads that require real-time read access to their blobs, moving them to an archive is not recommended. Blobs in archive must be first be rehydrated to hot or cool or read them. So in this case, I think they have to be brought into the hot or cool before we can before they are making live. Okay, so you for this, I think you can add the condition for base blobs. At this point of time, I will be the basics. Okay, so you can add these rules for the lifecycle management policy as an archive. So coming back, I think we had the from the customer managed keys, we have seen the shared access signature and the others. So let me now try on with the Azure file, right? So in our storage account 3, let me go to the storage browser. Classic file. See, remember they it was giving us an option for version file 3 and if, that we could have created if we don't wanted this. But I think at this point of time, I'm just creating say resource classic file share. Okay, so okay, lower, sorry. I'm just resource file share. Okay, so this is a IOPS I'm going to get and the capacity is terabyte. This is giving us an option. At this point of time, I don't want to have a backup, but in practical scenarios, you will have the backup. That is the reason if you uncheck this, I think check this, it is going to create some vault and have some backup policy, which is daily at 7:30 p.m. And retention of this point is for 30 days. Remember, at the storage account level, we have kept for 30 days. So that is what it's giving. At this point of time, I don't want to enable backup. I'm just going to create a review for this. So, your Azure file share is created. So with this, I think from practical perspective, this is what you have in a storage account. But in lab, I think I want to just brief you what you have in the lab, what you want to do. So again, this lab, you can just go to or have the Az104 as I've shown you last time as well. Az104 administrator and going to the lab 07. This is available publicly on the Microsoft Learning GitHub.io. Okay. So what you are going to do this in this lab is they have already given you scenario. You could create a storage account, create a blob container the way we did, also the file share. And based on that, they have given you the 3 tasks: storage account creation, blob, and the file, exactly the way we did. Okay. So the only thing which they have not done is the Azure policy because they have done the policy before, but I want to show you the policy creation along with some resource. That is the reason I kept the Azure policy purposely for this session so that I can show you that resource group cannot be created unless it has a tag so that I can bill whichever department is creating the resources. Okay, so that was the only purpose for that. So this is the subscription and this is the resource group. I think this is a straightforward. You have to see exactly the same thing we did. I have selected LRS, but you can select the geo redundant as well. Okay. We have also seen the security tabs, network access, and we selected the disable because we also wanted to have the uh, public network access. We want to have the public network access, but in this, I think you can disable it. Okay. Similarly, you have to go for encryption, create it, So in short, what you are trying to do is whatever I have shown you in the those particular tabs, you are going step by step. Just follow this particular. I think you should be good to go ahead. Also, we have seen this life cycle management policies, how they are moving to the cold. Here it is cold storage. In short, what I say is something which is moving back. Okay, so they are going rehydrated. That means archive to cool, cool to hot is what they are saying. If something is moved back from archive to, so that thing they will not be deleted. Okay, or something has moved down in last 7 days, so they should not be deleted. Okay, so these policies applies on the storage. So they are giving you the step-by-step instructions how you upload. And finally, there is also one more thing. I think this we did SAS URL. We I think after file shares, they also have something which you can. Yeah, this is something which you can have if you see an authorization here. Basically, who is authorized to access this is what they have created. Okay, so make sure you follow this from a SAS URL per se who can access, and this is what they have shown you practically in practical. After creating the SAS, they are giving you the way how this can be accessed. Okay. Now, network access to the storage account is where you are actually the way I've shown you that when the private endpoint or from the networks, you can enable. For that, you will require a virtual networks. You create a VNet and then make sure that this is applied as a service endpoint. Apply this as a service drop down as a Microsoft storage and make sure a default is a drop down of this as default. And the subnet also the default will be selected if you do have not created any another subnet. And then coming back is the networking, and make sure you are going to see that while you only attach to this storage endpoint, if you try to access from any other resource, you are going to this non-authorization error. So this is what I was showing you, that once you have this SAS URL as well as these policies created at the network level, this is what you have to try. So this is extra thing which you can try, which you have not seen in our lab. But I think in interest of time, I will stop here. I think that's all for today's session we had. Okay, so just recapping what we did so far is we understand the data structure. We did create the storage account. We have gone through blob storage, that means container and how they will look like. In storage security, we just gone through the encryption and the shared access signature and all those things. So that is what we did. Azure files, we created the classic file share, and then hands-on lab I have just shown you just now. Okay, so make sure you are able to cover topic by topic and do the labs. Then the way I've shown you, w- while you're covering this theory, just go and create the lab. Purpose of doing the same way I did was because I should remember what I am reading. Okay, because otherwise you will not remember those so many settings at once. Hence I was going parallelly into the storage account and coming back to the slides so that you remember whatever you're doing is correlating to the theory, and then again you're putting in practical. Okay, so again what I will do is I will just come back to the whatever we have covered. Okay, so remember this is the important, just giving you a short recap. What are the sizes? And this is the base slide. This I think is pretty much everything you should understand by itself. From here onwards, I think it's more of an storage account or blob creation, life cycle, encryption, shared access signature, customer managed keys. This I think again you can see in encryption. Okay, so this I think come back to the way in the tab I have shown you. At this point of time, we have left to the Microsoft to manage this. But if you have your own, I think you can select customer manage key, select from key vault, or you if you have anything from a URI perspective, you can go again. There is an selection way, but at this point of time, I have left it default. Okay, so that's all. I think this Azure files is pretty much everything the way you have seen from the storage account per se, and then we did with the hands-on labs. Okay, so that's all for today's session. Thanks.